Hi, Holly.
Hi, Kate.
We're talking about your book today,
Great.
Gender-Critical Feminism.
How did you get your hands on that? That looks like a hard copy to me.
It is a hard copy.
In Australasia.
I got it from my connection.
These are rare as hen's teeth at the moment.
They are, yes.
Congratulations.
A lot of people are awaiting their book.
Who's you got like a secret supplier, like a turf dealer?
Yeah, I can't give it away. Sorry.
Okay, cool. Well, I know it's great to see it in person.
Yes, so it exists. Okay, so the title of the book suggests that it's a contribution to the immediate debate over membership of the group woman.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to say that the impetus for the book, or as soon as you start reading, you realize that the impetus for the book is your sense that feminism has, I don't know, somewhere between like the late 1980s and now gone off the rails.
Yeah.
And the book is an attempt to get it back on the rails.
Yeah.
And you do this by redefining or defining a new feminism. Interestingly, you give the name of feminism redefined, gender-critical feminism. So you don't just call it feminism.
Yeah. And
only derivatively, I think, is it a contribution to this immediate debate over membership of the group woman.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to start by asking a few questions. Maybe the first one is, what is your definition of feminism?
Mm-hmm.
The second is, why do you name feminism thus redefined gender-critical feminism rather than just feminism, or feminism unmodified, as Catherine McKinnon would say?
Yeah.
A third one is, you don't see gender-critical feminism as something altogether new, right? You see it as, I think in your words, a continuation of radical feminism.
Yeah.
So I guess we should talk about how it is similar to and different from radical feminism. And there's also a question, why not just call it radical feminism?
Good.
And then maybe we should talk to you about what the relationship between gender critical feminism is and this immediate debate, or what guidance gender critical feminism gives us with respect to this particular issue.
Good. Okay. Sorry, I'm just making some notes. Can you just clarify though, before we go into questions 1 to 4? When you're saying you think the title suggests a contribution to the immediate debate, and then you name that as membership of the group women, what exactly do you mean?
Oh, I just mean, well, anyone who's heard this language, right, is just going to think, oh, this book is just responding to this issue of, who gets to count as a woman and who gets to be in women-only spaces.
Got it.
And I want to say, no, I think the book is about something more than this.
Good. Okay, good. So you mean anyone who's cognizant at all of this phrase, gender-critical feminism, is going to associate that with the fight between gender-critical feminists, so-called, and trans-inclusive, allegedly feminists, or that sort of opposition. And then it's going to bring up the slew of ideas associated with women-only spaces and what is a woman and biological definitions of women.
Yes. And they're it's not that I want to say they're wrong, but I want to situate your book in a bigger project.
Yes, same.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I should have asked that. What do you think of this? Is that a fair reading?
No, I mean, of course you're right that's the movement has its name, right? This thing that has been kind of growing for the last, I don't know, really like since 2014, some evidence a bit earlier, but sort of that phrase rising to prominence, that just is its name. And so there's a sense in which what I wanted to do is take that movement and the set of ideas associated with that movement or arising within that movement, although the ideas are scattered and sometimes in conflict, and then try to put some discipline on that and create a theory around and out of that. So I see what you mean, that it's like, well, then it's going to suggest that this is a book about women-only spaces, or whether trans women are women. But I think part of what I'm trying to do in the book is say this thing is actually, it is feminism unmodified. This is because what is currently understood to be feminism is now global justice. And so I think there is this question about, and maybe that's getting to your second question was like, why call it gender critical feminism rather than just feminism? And I think that is just because what most people think feminism is today is this thing that doesn't deserve the name, because it's just not about women anymore, or at least it's not about women as women. I was actually reading a thread on Twitter this morning, and it was by someone that I thought was a radical feminist. And she said, and this is not to pick on her at all, it's just like it's surprising how often this crops up, that someone that you think of as a radical has a definition of feminism that is just, that strikes me as really wrong. And so her definition was feminism is opposition to all forms of domination. Great. So feminism now could just be working on the discrimination against the aged and elderly, focusing on men, or on environmentalism, or on racism. And within any of those projects, you could decide that the worst off group is a group of men, but you're somehow now a feminist just because it has something to do with domination. Right? And that's like one version of the sort of bell hooks. It's just suddenly everything and everyone. But that's what people think feminism is now.
Yes. But you want to say that's wrong, right?
Yes.
But in calling your feminism gender critical feminism, you seem to be like tacitly accepting these other versions of feminism as versions of feminism. Why not try and wrestle the term feminism back?
I mean, it's a fair question. I don't know. I remember when we did my book launch in the UK, this question came up, and I think what I said then, and I'm interested in whether you buy this, is just when you want to have a movement for half of the whole world, you are going to have different interpretations about that movement. And it seems a little obnoxious to be like quibbling, you know what I mean? Like we all just insist on calling ours feminism, but actually there are now 27 disambiguations because no one knows what the word means when they use it, because these ones mean black feminism and these ones mean socialist feminism and these ones mean global justice, like your systems of domination. And so it's like it's not very clear just for communicating, because they are different, very different ideas, and we need to be able to identify them. But B, it's like there's something hegemonic, right, about fighting for the one true feminism. And so maybe it's like it's sort
You're being generous.
It's a concession in some sense, but it's like I don't really mind actually if it turns out there's gender critical feminism and socialist feminism and ecofeminism, and we all just kind of talk to each other respectfully. And I guess that's in keeping with your desire for some heterogeneity in feminism, right? Yes. Good. And why does sex-based feminism or feminism for women as women not have a seat at the table? Like there's a big banquet and we can all be there arguing about which intersections or combinations of projects need to be together. But this should at least surely deserves a seat at the table, whether it's at the head of the table or not. So I don't know if you buy that, but that's my kind of why I'm still calling it that.
Good. Yes. Okay, so now you've said something also about your definition of feminism.
I think almost.
Or you just then sex-based?
Sex-based feminism, and feminism that is about women as women, which doesn't quite mean just in virtue of her sex, which would bring to mind things like reproductive role or sexuality, because I do mean that to include the social construction of womanness or femininity throughout the last several thousands of years. And so the ideas we've come to associate with her and how we expect her to be, that's all I think women as women stuff.
Yeah.
So, and I think you and I actually have said before in print that we think there's something to be worked out, right, about exactly what's on that list. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, what the woman cry woman issues are.
Exactly. Like, it's not as though we think that's entirely obvious and settled.
No, not at all.
But there is an obvious distinction between women as women and women as people.
Yes.
And that's enough to get this definition going. It's like, if a woman has lung cancer, and there's no difference between men and women getting lung cancer or how the sort of health system treats them in virtue of their sex, lung cancer is not a feminist issue.
Yeah.
And so, okay, we know how to put some things on the people side and some things on the women as women side. And so we know at least broadly what it is to sort of define a feminist agenda.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's 2 out of 4 of your questions.
Yeah. I mean, another question is, I asked why I call it gender-critical feminism rather than just feminism, but I suppose this is a question about why gender-critical, why center a critique of gender in a conception of feminism.
So that, I think, is just the continuity with, now is it fair to say with radical feminism, or should one say with second wave feminism, which is obviously broader and a little earlier, but it's at least this emphasis on the sex-gender distinction, this distinction between what she is and what she has been made to be, and this real attempt to sort of name what she has been made to be using the word gender. We don't need it. We could just talk about sex role socialization, or there's lots of ways to point to that stuff, but the feminist project of really focusing on that stuff, which I actually think Beauvoir was doing already in 49 or whatever. So maybe it's not even fair to say that's a second wave project, but it's a project they took up with great enthusiasm, perhaps following in Beauvoir's footsteps. So that's the sort of gender critical. There is the original usage, right? It's like that stuff is a way that she is made to be, and it constrains her options, and we're critical of that. And I think that's why some of the commentary online by the anti-gender critical feminists against the gender critical is like, that's such a stupid name. We're all critical of gender, right?
Well, I wanted to ask you this: does this distinguish us being critical of gender?
No, it's just possibly a bad name, but it is our name now. I think that's do you know what I mean? That's the thing I keep coming back to. It's like, that's what the movement's called. That's how these women... Oh,
okay. Sure. Yeah. So do you think it might be I thought you might have more to say about this, about how we have, part of the reason for which you've called the book Gender Critical Feminism is that you think we've lost sight of this critique of gender, or lost sight of a future without gender, or something like that.
No, I mean, like, I do think that the explanation is simpler than that, right? It is, I mean, it might be that, like, the reason those women first started calling themselves gender critical is because
they felt...
and they're like, what the fuck is this gender as identity bullshit? We had a meaningful...
the language of gender affirmation.
Exactly.
Suggests.
That stuff's so antithetical to this second wave and earlier type project. So it might be that that's why they called it that. But I think by the time I came along, it just was called that. And then I was looking for more, what's the underlying theory of their ideas? Why are they pushing back against this new concept of gender? What's the source of the aggravation, and how does this relate to these earlier ideas? So there's a sense in which there's more to it, if there was more to it for them, which there probably was. And I think I want to say there was more to it for them. Okay. Though I might be projecting. Something else that I wanted to ask you about gender was, in your book you say that you prefer a conception of gender as norms over gender as identity. And I thought, yes, so do I, but I think I prefer a conception of gender as class over a conception of gender as norms. Good,
I wonder if norms makes it sound like there's some symmetry, or some evenness, some equality. And I wonder if it also produces a picture in which gender is oppressive in the sense of being suffocating, of of people's self-expression, rather than being hierarchical. Because that's not the feminist analysis, isn't that, or the feminist critique of gender isn't that. I don't think it's that it's imposed on people, or that it thwarts people's self-expression. It's that it's hierarchy.
Yeah.
That the feminine norms put women in a position of subordination to men.
Yeah, I think you're pushing on exactly the right place, because I think this is not fully resolved for me yet, even in my mind, which means it couldn't possibly be yet resolved in my book.
Yeah.
So I think that's like an entirely fair question. What I've got to so far is that I think there absolutely would be a problem with the channeling of people into roles on the basis of their sex, where the roles is broadly understood as sort of inculcate, is that the word?
Yeah.
Inculcation of certain sorts of behaviors, beliefs, whatever, personality traits, even if those two sets
were hierarchically
were the same, were equally valued.
Good. Yeah.
So that's complementarity, as I understand it, even though that can take various like more contentful and less contentful forms.
Yeah.
And then of course lots of the second wavers then also pointed to this move. So you can have difference that turns into groups, and I guess you wouldn't yet call that class because there's no hierarchy.
Yeah.
But then that shifts into hierarchy. But I think those are two separate problems.
Yes.
And I think you're right to say that norms points more to the repression or constraining of people on the basis of their sex into these roles and behaviors. And that I did focus a lot on that in the book, but then casually sometimes say caste and class to also refer to the fact that that one is considered worse and she is subordinated.
Yeah, and sometimes not so casually, right? Because you say that, or this is your definition of gender-critical feminism, right?
Sex, class,
It's a feminism that believes in sex, class, and in overthrowing it.
Yeah. But are you saying you think, actually I say that, but I believe more in sex complementarity as the problem?
No, no, this is... now I'm wondering whether you do, actually. I probably hadn't realised how much this wasn't resolved for you, or was just treating you as me. And it's not also it's not that talking about norms precludes you from talking about class, right? Like you can still say those norms channel people into classes, and that's a problem.
Yeah.
I suppose maybe it was for me. It was more of a pragmatic worry, or a sense of missed opportunity. If we keep talking about norms, we're not going to be making really clear what the problem is.
But I think that is,
and
it's
problem.
Not that I think it's the whole problem, but it's that I think, and even if we could agree that the hierarchy is worse, the worst part of it, it's not like if we could just resolve the hierarchy and get back to complementarity, we'd be done with feminism now. Of course not.
No, I agree, but I think the second problem might be derivative. So feminism targets gender to get rid of sex hierarchy, and in doing so gets rid of the roles altogether, and thus the second problem. Do you see what I'm saying?
I think so, but I think it's the other way around.
Tell me.
So does feminism target hierarchy? So you could have a difference feminism that only targeted the differential valuing. I don't think so. I think you target gender norms, free everyone as people, and then you obliterate both repression of human potential and social hierarchy.
Maybe the difference is is just in the motivation.
Okay.
I want to say that the feminist motivation is to get rid of hierarchy. Great that people will have more options, more ways of living and expressing themselves, when that project is successful.
Yeah.
But that's not its motivation.
But is this because you think that this is a liberal radical distinction? Like it's the liberal who's really giving a shit about freedom And so we don't want to be the norms guy that's really most worried about repression of human potential, because that's a liberal thing. Like, what? Why?
No, because I think for me it's more that feminism's not for everyone. Feminism is for women's freedom.
But my stuff is just as much women's freedom as your stuff. Like if
but it's only women's freedom insofar as women, like men, have a role forced on them, right?
I think I'm just really struggling to see the difference between. So there's two bad things that happen, right? You just get this little baby human, and first of all, she's made to be all these stupid things. Remember I sent you that passage from that sci-fi novel, and it was like her deference training, her passivity training.
Yes. I love the use of the word training.
It's just so helpful in making clear how the socialization process works.
Yeah.
So there's that, and it's like she could have been anything, and now you have just squashed her into this tiny box and made her such that she's just more likely to be some sort of service person for a man. That's really wrong.
Yeah.
And it's really wrong to think that man is the one who's a person or fully human or worth something, and that she is disposable or inferior or whatever. Those are two distinctive wrongs. But I think I'm just struggling to see why you want to say, surely feminism is about the hierarchy one, but not the repression one.
For you, is the wrong that women are put into a box at all, or is it the content of what's in the box?
Both. A box at all. She should be free on the basis of her sex.
Yeah, and that would make her situation no different from men's, right? Because they're in a box too, the masculine box.
Oh, good. No, I think her situation's worse. And would that be because she is more constrained?
Oh, okay, right. See, I want to say this is what's driving me.
Yeah.
It's about what I don't. They're not to me equivalently wronged or oppressed.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Totally agree with that.
Yeah. So, but I think it's talk of class that vindicates that intuition, or allows us to say that, not talk of norms.
Yeah. Okay. That it's not obvious to me. So I feel like I would still have the resources to say, yeah, there's some sense in which, in virtue of being male, he's also subject to some norms, and some of them police him a lot, right? Like his departures from alpha type masculinity, he can get beaten up, or there's a higher suicide rate for gender non-conforming boys. So it's not like I would deny that his potential is also limited, but it seems limited in much fewer and less significant ways. And he also benefits from it, which is hardly true or not true at all in the case of women. And then, of course, you're right that the content of it, exactly what that content is, also matters, because she's being shaped to be the person who props him up. Maybe that's more true in the 50s than it is now, but it's certainly been true historically. So it's like the fact of it, the content of it, making her a sort of slave for him, and then the hierarchy once you've constructed these two types of people, putting him in the superior position. But maybe like neither of our stories, if we just say it's hierarchy or we just say it's norms, we're not getting that whole 3-point picture.
Yeah.
So that's kind of helpful, right? Like maybe they all matter.
Yeah,
and
have a place.
Yeah, and so somehow we need to find a term that either points at all of them.
Yeah. And it occurred to me too that the radical feminists have talked a lot about how there is something about invisible about women's oppression.
Yep.
So I was thinking perhaps that is to do with the norms.
But you mean it's invisible because we think it's natural, or it's invisible for some other?
Or because it looks like, I'm not sure because it's something to do with, I think for me it's something to do with the roles. Look at what the norms are socializing the sexes into. It looks like complementarity, right? Different roles.
Yeah.
and it just seems clearer in other cases. I mean, maybe it's just clearer because those theories have made it clear, right? That it seems clearer that like capitalist and worker, they're not equivalent roles. You know, that's just hierarchy. One is exploiting the other.
They're not equivalent roles but also because there's social mobility between them, right? So they're not as repressive in the sense that sex norms are final, unless you can manage to, you know, be a trans person who's fully passing and then passes in stealth, right? So there's extremely few exceptions to the system, whereas at least in these other systems where we sort of we're not really channeling people. Is that true? I'm not sure. Maybe people with societies with a stronger class structure will say we are, because it's correlated to what job your parents did that you're in that part. Okay, so I'm thinking, okay,
yeah.
So there's that complication, but at least you might think, it's sort of up for grabs. There's a bit of mobility there, and then you can sort of, it's not that certain persons are inevitably in either class. I'm sure someone who's an expert in, like, maybe that's just not true of these subordinated castes in India, for example. Like, there's much less mobility in some countries, but I think in the UK, for example, when I looked into it there's like some stuff where it's like highly predictive what job your parents did, what job the kids will do, but there's also substantial social mobility. So sex does still seem quite distinctive. That it's
No, I agree with that.
I think that's really helpful, though, in the sense of, like, I definitely think it's true that I'm leaning on the repression part of it. You know, you and I have talked before about, like, a self of one's own, right? Like this idea that there's this person potential that's like so crushed or so restricted, or and just that there's a real wrong in that. And even later on, like, she realizes, turns 30 and discovers feminism, but then she has all this undoing to do, and that takes a lot of work. And does she ever really get to the point where she's fully as she might have been had she never been repressed from the start?
No.
And that's a harm, and it's like a harm that I really want to point at. It's something that gender does to her from the outside and hurts her. But I do accept your point that it's like, it's not the whole story, and it might not be that helpful just to use that phrase, or to mostly lean on that phrase and then kind of sometimes casually also say class and caste. Sort of point at the hierarchy but not really dwell on it.
And I guess I've been thinking about it so much recently because it seems like the unsaid thing in this debate about who counts as a member of the group woman, right? I notice how much I think we're not saying the woman is we seem to be talking a lot about biology, and not so much about class. And I think it would be helpful to do that.
What do you think that would change, though? Because I guess the reason why so many feminists now are leaning on the biology part is that it's just a very clear distinction between trans women and women. And so they want to lean on it to just as a heuristic way of making the point, like, you are not like us, and stop trying to distract from all our issues with your issues. Like, that's really shit allyship.
But I think I have this sense that there's maybe some dishonesty there, and I also think that approach is going to lead us to a different future, not the feminist future.
Okay.
So when I say I think there's some dishonesty, if we're feminists, I don't think our worry or our resistance can or ought to be explained by the thought that you're not biologically like us. It's to be explained by the thought that we are members of an oppressed class and you are not.
Yeah, but they are not, because had they had the biology, they would have been channeled into this role on the basis of their sex, and therefore become a member of the class through socialization and social treatment.
Sure.
So that's why I'm thinking the biology is just kind of the heuristic for that claim.
So long as we remember that.
Yeah, okay, fair point.
And it just seems to me that sometimes we're not remembering it, yeah. Because I think if that's the framing, right, or if that's the motivation for emphasizing biology, then everything, then it's a sort of, what do I want to say?
No, I think I know where you're going, because I've seen this show up in the trans women sport debate. There's some, and now I can't remember if it's actually feminists who say it or it's like the Matt Walsh conservatives who are sort of getting on board with this type of feminism. But I think it might be actually that side. But they were like, look, it's got nothing to do with whether you went through Tanner stage 2 puberty or not, because that's in the new FINA judgment.
Yeah.
It's to do with the fact that you're a man. If you're a man, and it's like, I just think that's misguided, right? Because it's not. It's not that we just want separate sports for men and women for no reason.
Yes,
right? It's ridiculous. Yeah. So it's not about the biology. It's about the fact that, as FINA discovered and as feminists had been trying to say for the last however many years, male puberty makes a really big difference to the physiology post-puberty. So Matt Walsh is kind of missing the point, right? It's like...
I know, but okay, but I think I want to say maybe sometimes we're missing the point too, right? Because could we just describe that view as the sort of like the science-based view? So what then would a feminist view? Couldn't a feminist view be, okay, sure, but we should also remember that females have been, in virtue of being socialized into femininity, have been socialized into non-athleticness.
Yes.
So we want to be a bit careful about reifying females as secondary athletes.
No, good. Yes, I think that's absolutely fair. Anytime you're leaning on the biological difference point to justify separation or differential treatment, you're at risk of locking in these differences. And we don't know, or at least in some cases we don't know, whether those differences are natural in the sense they go back for all of time.
Yeah, or to what extent they are the differences that they will be the differences that they now are.
Yes, but still, even if it turns out that like many gender critical feminists now are leaning on biological difference as a heuristic for social difference, and they're calling that thing like necessary when it was actually contingent and a result of her oppression, would that still be a bad heuristic in the sense that all they're trying to do is say to the trans woman, stop it, because you haven't had anything like our experience or our treatment, and so you don't belong in the changing room or the shelter or the fucking feminist group or like whatever else. So they are still always just trying to lean on the distinction, right, between the trans woman's experience and the woman's experience, and biology is just a shorthand for that. I would have thought.
Yes, I think sometimes it doesn't look like a shortcut to me.
Okay. It looks like
and then maybe even if it is a shortcut, that's not clear to everyone else in the public sphere who's not read the radical feminist literature.
Okay, yeah.
Then you might find that once you've won this debate, you then have to do all the work again of being like, oh, actually these differences can be accounted for by our socialization. And
okay, so you see the risk as being like, we lean heavily on biology as the difference between the trans woman and the woman. We justify excluding trans women from all these things where they shouldn't be in virtue of their maleness and their male socialization. And then later we find out we're sort of almost back at difference feminism of the kind that the 60s feminists had to come along and be like, no, we're actually the same. Stop.
A little bit, yes.
So that thing becomes
like we're going to lose our politics in doing this,
But don't you think this is just like, I think you said something the other day which I thought was really helpful about like, it's really hard to understand these feminist claims out of context because they are always responses to overcorrections. And that sort of makes sense to me, right? Like there just was this idea of like women and men being so different, naturalized, like that's not culture. And so then, they kind of overcorrected when they were like, no, we are all exactly the same and there should be no discrimination on the basis of sex, not even for pregnancy, right? Yeah. It's like, okay, that went too far in the other direction. So then you needed the flip of the new feminists to be like, no, we actually need positive discrimination because there are these cases where we're missing out on important real differences, whether they are built by oppression or there by nature. Yeah. So maybe it's like, this is just another cycle of that, right? Like,
yes, yeah, good. But I just think if we can keep our eye on that, then we'll do better.
Right.
I suppose I also think it just might be more persuasive, more politically helpful to be like constantly reminding people of this political context.
Yeah. Yes. I think that's fair. But I think maybe I'm almost taking like slightly too much of a pragmatist, because then it's like, yeah, that's what happens though, these problems bubble up and one group comes in to solve them and they slightly solve them too far, and so the next group has to, but it's like it's all sort of working out okay in the end. And so maybe I don't know, maybe I'm too blasé about the like, maybe the gender critical feminists will slightly overcorrect in the sex difference direction, and then the next ones will be like, no, we're all exactly the same.
Yeah.
And maybe that's okay.
I guess I got a little bit alarmed, or I was surprised in Kathleen Stock's book when she says something like, we're always going to need these single sex spaces, or we're always going to need women only bathrooms because women are anatomically, if you like, rapeable. And yes. I got a shock, because that's not how, I guess when you converge on so much in the way of conclusion, you it's not apparent to you that you really differ on the reasons for the conclusion.
Yes.
And you really differ on vision of the future.
Yes.
So I was like, right. I mostly have thought of single sex spaces as interim measures, right?
Yeah. No, I think I agree, and I think we probably have fairly similar visions of the future. And I think part of the explanation with Kathleen is she's very much not a utopian thinker. She's quite hostile to utopianism from conversations that I've had with her. So I think that's partly it, right? She's just considering herself to be very like practical, and of course there's no future in which there's no rape, right? Because we know what men are like. And it's like, I don't know how far we're thinking, well, it's like 2,000 years, and maybe she's thinking 20.
Yeah, that's like what her future is.
And maybe hers is like what constraints is she allowing herself to drop? Because I've just noticed that when we talk, it's like she'll sort of be so dismissive about something I'll say, but I think it's just because she's just holding a lot more stuff fixed. Like, of course, not everyone's going to become a feminist, and of course, there's always going to be these types of incentives that people are responding to, and so you're probably always going to have male violence, and you just need to have better protections. Whereas I'm like, how could we design our education system such that... and I think you do that too, right? We are like, the sky's the limit.
Yeah. And this is the thing, we want to not be in the future, male violence.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think that's part of the explanation. And then I think part of it is just that like she might be more leaning towards a form of difference, feminism, complementarity, than either of us are.
Yeah. I guess I also, it strikes me as this is as an opportunity to do like consciousness raising among women, doesn't it? I think I want to say, I just like when we talk so much about biology, it seems like we're all just being mini scientists. And I think I want to say, no, these women aren't just being responsive to science. They have political consciousness.
I don't know. I don't totally know what you mean by that. So who?
I guess when we talk a lot about, when we say we need sex-based sports because this is the reality of biology.
Yeah.
It seems that's got good consequences for women, insofar as they can still be competitive in sport. But what's feminist about that? that just seems like the view that you would have if you were responsive to the science.
Yeah, yeah, good. That's actually funny because I did this interview. I say little because not many people watched it. I did this little audience interview thing the other day with this Macquarie Liberals Club, whatever that's called, Macquarie University Liberals. I just lost my thread. Sorry, what did you say?
No, sorry, I'm just harping on about this.
No, but you said something specifically on sport.
Well, using sport as an example, when we use biology as a heuristic, perhaps it looks as though all we gender-critical feminists are doing is being responsive to the science. And I think there's more going, and you do too, there's more going on for us. We feel like insulted and inflamed and wronged.
Yes, sorry, no, I lost my thread, but I was thinking of that. The interviewer asked me, how do we get more dialogue between like sporting bodies and feminists? And I said we shouldn't, because the feminist organizations are ideologically captured, and if you bring them in, they're just going to say trans women are women and we should all be competing.
Oh, okay, so that's a slightly different reason.
But so I did say, yeah, exactly. I said we should just leave that because the scientists, the human rights law people, the athletes, once you talk to all of those people, you just are going to get a story on which fair competition, safety, and so on requires sex segregated sports, at least for now. Who knows?
Yeah.
But so I thought that wasn't, you're right in a sense that it's not a specifically feminist position, because it's the position that any sensible person who cares about the evidence we have right now is probably going to arrive at.
Yeah.
So in that sense, I agree. It's not just.
So I guess I'm just wondering, is there a feminist position here? You know, I'm thinking of how Leanne talked about the role of sport in sort of building yourself up as a class for itself.
Yeah.
You know, so a feminist position would think actually there's more at stake in the loss of sport for women.
Good. Yeah.
Than just, you know, like the not winning and not making teams and things.
Yeah. Well, we were going to write a paper on this, right? And we just somehow
didn't. Yeah.
But the value of women's sport to women going way beyond what
politically
gets talked about as the value. And I think that's right. Even these things like solidarity, right, between women.
Yes.
And what that can do for feminism, or women showing solidarity with each other. Or,
women being your community and your reference point.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. And that I agree that's a
women becoming athletes is itself norm defying.
Yes. Yeah. No, I agree. But then what? So you said we're indignant. Where did that tie in? That we.
Well, I think it's the political context that makes sense of the indignation.
Against trans women's claims to be women or belong in the women's category.
Yeah. And that sometimes maybe, or that indignation gets suffocated or disappeared when we just explain our views in terms of biological differences.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. Yeah. There was this great, I think, did I send it to you? Yeah, I did. I sent you that thread, didn't I? There was this great, was he a trans woman who had detransitioned?
Yeah.
And he was just writing like, I'm not going to apologize to women for doing this, because every woman I know encouraged me, supported me, said I was beautiful, whatever.
Yeah.
I really thought that was so helpful, because I do feel indignant and...
Yes. And he used this word, right? He said, no one ever told me women would feel insulted.
Yes. Yeah. So it's like he's now discovered a segment of the feminist community who think it's insulting and who feel indignant about it. This man just comes along and claims.
Yeah. And he seemed to think that feeling was valid.
Yes. But by now on reflection, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's true. If you just try to say, my indignation is grounded in your having the wrong biology. Yeah. Which, if we think it's developmental pathway, it's like that happened ages ago and you can't necessarily see it, that's not necessarily pointing to the right stuff, right? Like it's rather you had this whole life experience under patriarchy, and you are now just thinking as some sort of frivolous thing you can claim to be the same as these people. That's so...
That makes sense of the feeling incensed, right?
Yeah, and this is why I don't know if we've talked about this before.
And it makes the idea of gender identity incoherent in a way that perhaps gender as norms doesn't. Sorry, I cut you off.
No, but maybe, I don't know if incoherent just so much as like trivial, right? Like even if you can understand what they mean, I claim to feel like a woman.
Right.
What the fuck would you know about what?
Yeah, and I guess it certainly makes it immoral, I think.
And I was just thinking about when I first encountered, like my very first sort of experience of, I don't know if I should say the context, being in a philosophy seminar, but my first encounter with someone who clearly thought he was a woman, right?
Yeah.
The shock of that, like this person performing or pantomiming femininity, and you're sitting there like, I literally am this humankind, that you are now showing all your ideas about what that kind is or means.
Yeah.
It did feel insulting.
And also, and you forced this on me.
Yeah.
Now you seem to be ridiculing it.
Yeah. And the norms now prevent any criticism of that. So it's not like I could have just gone up and said, this is uncomfortable.
Or in a way that I think people could about something like blackface.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Or maybe there's some middle ground case where it's like it's not fully taboo to do it, and it's not fully taboo to do anything but support it. But there's just room for, like, I mean, maybe the bougie one drop Indigenous person is the good example, right? It's like there's room in the community to discuss that person because they meet the one drop rule, but they're like so out of the culture. So maybe that's a sort of interim case, but somehow we've just managed to get to this point with trans stuff where it's like you can't do anything but affirm that person. So women now lack the right to express that indignation in any form. And then you're just stuck with it, right?
And so then perhaps all we can do is say things like they're male, or that's false, or rather than politically that's not okay.
Yeah, that's right. So the pointing to the biology might not be that there's an insufficient political analysis, but might just be like, these are the tools we have, like under the taboos of society right now.
This is all we've been left with. The other thing that I wanted to ask you about was that, so I mean, I guess we've been talking a little bit about it, right? But I wondered, reading this, I think it became clearer to me that what's not so apparent in the public sphere is, or it looks like or gender critical feminists are just opposed to something, right? It's not so clear that we're like en route to a destination. And I think it would be helpful if we talked more like this, right? If we described the future more. I really noticed this in the chapter, which chapter is it? Where you talk about transgenderism being a low ambition project.
Yeah, I think that's chapter 5.
And you sort of you paint this picture of gender critical feminism leading to a future in which perhaps all of these problems have been solved. And I think that's just not clear in these debates, right? So it's not, so if gender critical feminism, I'm being so inarticulate. If gender critical feminism wins, it's not that there will be a whole lot of people who are suffering because they can't express themselves. There will no longer be gender.
Which is the cause of harm and suffering for trans people as well. No, I agree. I don't know how.
But do you see what I don't? Do you agree that like this is all sort of not so clear in the public sphere?
No, I do agree, but I was just going to say I don't know how we could get that reframing out there, because whenever I've tried to articulate that, like I think that's the main argument of my Ending Sex-Based Oppression paper, which came out before the book.
Yeah.
So, but it's like it took me a whole paper, right, to really lay out, look, there are these different strategies, and one is like free up just the trans people to change category. And this other one is like free everyone to stop being repressed by these stupid norms, and like to meticulously make the case that like this one is higher ambition and produces more freedom and probably higher well-being overall. But how do you get that just in a like snazzy Twitter-ready phrase? Like,
you know what? I think the phrase gender critical is a way in here. And so perhaps we have to keep reminding people that this is perhaps we have to keep reminding people what our purposes here are.
Yeah.
And I think so and so why I'm talking about this after just having talked about the emphasis on problematic, if you like, emphasis on biology.
Yeah.
Is that I think that if we keep doing that, we're not talking about our purposes enough.
Yeah.
So there's a connection for me between these two things.
Yeah, okay, good. No,
our political purposes and the future that we're headed to.
Yeah. No, I definitely think you're right about the more positive framing that's just a sort of good political strategy, right? To have we're pro this, we're for this, we care about women. So I think that's exactly right.
And you also make this point that trans men are our constituents.
Yeah.
Or, constituents of feminism.
Yeah. Which I think helps
absolutely
with the exclusion worry, right? That people, which is not quite about positive or negative framing, but it's like how to address one common criticism that we get, that we're somehow trans exclusionary. Absolutely false.
Yes.
But just maybe it's enough to be like, no, what gender critical means is freeing everyone, trans people included, from these things that cause them harm. I think that was helpful in my class recently, because I sort of made this point, this older conception of gender that has been appropriated to this other thing. It was coercive, and that coerciveness, we care about how it impacts females. They care about how it impacts trans people. But you can now get these papers like in legal journals being like, oh, it's so morally wrong to coerce trans people into the wrong gender category. Like, and then they miss the fact that that's the fucking thing that feminists have been saying all along, that you've been doing that. So how do you now care about that being done to trans people but not half the population of the world?
Yeah.
Like if you get the problem of coercive categorizing, you should be able to get it for everyone, right?
That's a feminist contribution, that idea.
Yes. So I found that so amazing to see that like appropriated narrowly for a sort of trans liberation case in a way that entirely overlooked this discussion has been going on, at least 70 years now, maybe longer.
Yeah.
And it's not unique to trans people.
How to make sense of that?
I guess because there's so much misogyny there that thinks that women are not being coercively made feminine, because women just are naturally feminine, right? So it's only the men who are being wronged by this. That's misogyny.
Right, yeah.
I mean, unless it turns out to be true and then it's not misogyny, it's just science.
Very open-minded of you. Because I guess I was just thinking the same can't be said on the trans inclusionary side, right? I think that we can say we've got the resources to more or less solve everyone's problems happily.
Yeah.
But you can't solve, I think they can't solve women's problem.
Only by telling them to be trans, right? They can solve women's problems by saying anyone who doesn't like femininity is welcome to declare non-binary or trans man identities.
Yeah.
That's what they're offering.
Yeah. Well, and the feminist view is that you can't. I mean, no amount of identifying as someone else will mean that you don't get treated as a woman, as a member of the subordinate class.
Right. So A, they're offering a narrow solution to a narrow number of people, and B, the solution probably won't work because you still look like female and you're still going to be treated like that on that basis. Unless you can pass, which most people probably can't.
And in fact, even if you succeed, your success relies, well, insofar as it relies on the preservation of femininity, it's going to rely on other people.
Yeah, exactly.
Still being.
So you're just throwing
in that group.
Some women under the bus to escape.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I don't know how that's not more clearly visible, that what they're offering, while claiming to be feminists, I think, and claiming to have no conflict of interest with feminism, is not solving.
And I think that's part of the problem, right? I think it would be fine if those people have their interests and they need a movement.
Yes.
And women have their interests and they need a movement.
Two separate movements. Let's try to negotiate the conflicts if there are.
That's right.
As they arise. But it's not that. It's like there's nothing to see here. Feminism just is trans activism and And so what does that imply? Most women just are hyper feminine and very happy with their treatment. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
I mean, unless they can say.
I think I asked you this, right? It's like, could they say that they're affirming people's gender identities while also criticizing the content of gender?
I mean, maybe they could.
Can they have those two parallel projects?
Maybe they can pick and choose. Maybe they can say lots of women really do have woman/feminine gender identities. Still, no one should be raped, right? But it's totally okay to expect her to be beautiful because she's not non-binary, right?
Yeah.
So
and McKinnon is going to say the gender identity woman is rapeability.
Yeah.
So you're also going to have a really hard time eradicating that.
Yeah. But if they can build some story where it's like what it is to identify with or as femininity
doesn't license
it's like some narrow subset of stuff. Maybe it's just clothes and presentation, but it doesn't license any sexism on that basis.
Yeah.
I haven't seen anyone try to articulate this, so I don't really know how to fill it in.
Yeah. I know, and we need the science fiction writers to do the describing the future work, right?
Yes.
So what I'm asking of us is not something that you or I mean, I think that you can do it a bit.
Thank you.
But we really need Sharpcliffe and Stillman, don't we?
We do, exactly. And we want one from the trans side to write their
Yes,
utopia.
exactly.
We write ours, and then we just get everyone to watch both adaptations on Netflix and say which one's the more desirable future. Yeah. And I feel like we are miles ahead. But that's just my bias.
So we need this could be really helpful though.
Yeah. I wonder if there is just stuff we don't know about, but I haven't seen this type of thinking from trans academics yet. But maybe I just don't know what books. I
feel like all I've encountered is the suggestion that the gender abolition future be deferred, which triggers me.
Okay. What, because...
why are we always the ones deferring? Okay. We'll wait until later.
So what is the thought, though, that it's just more important to give trans people what they need now because they're more hurt or more...
I think so, yeah.
I see. And then we sort out...
That's more of a pressing. But when do we... I guess, so maybe I would make the same point I'm making about us to them. Or remember your purposes, because I'm worried you're going to get really busy affirming everyone's gender identities and then and forget that you ever thought gender was wrong.
Yeah, and not to mention, how many times have we seen this from leftist men before, asking women to put some other bigger project first?
Yeah, we're dealing with capitalism now. Lot will come later.
Yeah.
By dealing with capitalism, we'll sort your situation out too.
Yeah, so awfully suspicious, isn't it? That trans women are like, oh, no, let's just do us first again.
Yeah.
And then
I promise next time. Yeah. And we're dutifully okay.
Yeah. Not to claim that all trans women are leftist men, because some of them are just other men, right? Centrist men.
Not leftists. Men.
Yeah. But it's a surprising coincidence strategically.
What else did I want to ask you about?
What else did you want to ask me about? I think we might have been going for about an hour and a...
Is that enough?
Quarter?
The only other thing I was interested in was the similarity and difference between radical feminism
and gender critical. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not sure where that gets us that we've not already gone.
Well, I mean, I think there's some sense in which the answer is none. There's no difference, because I have such a minimalist conception of radical feminism. But I think I have taken some like academic liberties in making that move.
Yeah.
So I've looked back at a history that had many different and kind of irreconcilable ideas. And then I've just said, either that has nothing in common or almost nothing in common, it's very hard to impose order, or it just has a very minimalist definition, which is like commitment to female people as a class or as a caste.
Yeah.
Refusal to just try to combine that into some other movement that men say is more important, like socialism or Marxism. And after that, everything is an open question. So I think that's how I run it in the book. I'm just like, yeah, women are oppressed. Okay, but how did that get started? And
what sustains it, and
exactly
what does the future look like?
Yeah, and if that's the only project, we take women seriously as a group that's oppressed, and we just ask all these questions about how and why and what will stop it and what does the great future look like, then the project is the same between the gender critical feminist and the radical feminist. But I think someone who's committed to a much more substantive, like they love a particular theorist of radical feminism, like they're a Firestone person or a Millet person, then they're going to say like, well, gender critical feminism's very different because look, it's really obsessed with trans stuff right now and we didn't care about that very much, and then maybe soon it'll start talking about porn and prostitution more, which will be great, but still.
I was going to say gender critical feminism doesn't yet have its canon.
No. Yeah, and I hope it will, and I hope it will follow the many interests of the radical feminists in determining what that is.
I know partly why I wanted to mention it was I like that you identify as a procedural commitment something like openness to criticism.
Yeah.
And that seems really important in this, or that seems a really contextual defining feature. Yeah. I can see it arising in this moment of silencing.
Yeah.
But I also thought, it's interesting. It's not something that I would associate with, I think, any version of feminism.
Yeah.
A lot of openness to criticism.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
and maybe there's even something necessary there, right? Think about how much the world denies what feminism says.
Yeah.
Maybe to begin with, you can't have any, or perhaps to begin with, you need people just to say, okay, I believe you.
Yeah.
I will take that on trust.
Yeah. No, I get tangled up about this sometimes, because on the one hand, I'm furious at how people just take trans activist claims and believe them, because they are often just utterly false and bad for women, right? But then if you think about the politics of situations where like extraordinarily racist institutions or whatever finally get a reckoning where a black person can say something, it's going to look really ridiculous if the white representative is like, well, let me just go and subject that to my own.
Do some research.
Yeah, like that.
Not a settled question.
Yeah, and so I can see that for men as well, right? Like when feminists first started saying, like, man, you were doing so many shit things in this one meeting.
Yeah.
And then he's like, I don't think I am. So it's that. So I see the politics of it versus the intellectual content of it. You do sort of want some deference in the cases that are legitimate. But then maybe feminism's well established enough now that it can start sort of loosening its grip a little and being more evidence responsive and responsible about statistics and opening up to hearing from men sometimes about like what it feels like to be all men and what might be more successful when it comes to like, gaining allies or I don't know. I think we can hear that now, right?
So, I think you're right, and I like this. And I guess I'm blaming feminism unfairly. But I look around at what's going on, and I think we opened the door to the. It was radical feminists who talked a lot about women's experiences and feelings.
Yeah.
And those being the raw material out of which we should generate our analysis.
Yeah, and of course you can't disagree with someone's experience or feelings. That would be insane.
That's right.
Yeah.
So now we are where we've lost our teeth, we've lost our teeth, as you might say.
Yeah. But this, I think, refocusing gives us some chance of getting teeth back, right? Because we don't care that much anymore. I mean, we have data about male violence and women's situation, and we don't need to rely so much on her experience anymore, right? So
I know. I guess sometimes I think, because I think you're right about this, but I also think, is this unfair of me to criticize feminists for this? Because I'm just getting to be, I'm parasitic on it, right?
Yeah.
Like if those feminists hadn't just done some deference to women about their experiences of sexual harassment, assault, and so forth, feminism wouldn't exist.
Yeah, but maybe you wouldn't exist in the 60s or 70s going around being like, ugh, blind agreement, right? Right? Maybe you would think that's a good strategy for
exactly.
the time. Because we're overcorrecting on her never being believed. But this is what we talked about earlier, how it's cyclical. Like, okay, now we've gone so far in the direction of believe her always, even when she's clearly lying because she's a deluded attention seeker. And we've got ample evidence of that. Okay, now.
No, and so there's two problems there. Like, one is believing people when we shouldn't, but the other is there's still some dishonesty, right? It's really clear that feminists don't believe. If we believed everyone, we couldn't be feminists anymore.
Yeah. Because everything's contradictory. And
I was going to say, I'm not even sure that we could cope.
Yeah.
Because we'd be accepting a contradictory reality.
Yeah. But I guess I'm just thinking it's like, if it's true that it swings and roundabouts, then we're now at the roundabout where we can be a bit more skeptical and subjecting some claims to a bit more scrutiny.
Yeah.
Without that looking like we're, somehow insulting or mistreating. It's still going to be difficult, right? And it's going to be difficult in this current beliefs about the intersectional hierarchy. It's still going to be very hard for anyone alleged to be higher in it to outright disbelieve or not defer to anyone alleged to be lower in it, which I think is what's going on with trans women and women at the moment, because the liberal intersectional feminists position the trans woman as the most marginalized woman, to borrow Jenny Saul's phrase. And then it's like, oh, just the mere woman is higher on this privilege hierarchy. So she had absolutely better defer and believe and not be like, you say that, but I think that's probably false. But that's just we don't buy that framework, right? So we think here there is a female person standing next to a male person, and he has a gender identity, and she doesn't, but she's female. So they can listen to each other maybe. But he doesn't listen to her. He just tells her what her experience is because he thinks he has it.
And I mean, and maybe I guess I just think too, if you're right, and then there's still so much work for feminism to do, right? Like, what did you say? There's so many open questions.
Yep.
The only settled thing is that women are a class.
Yep.
Everything else is open, so we should take the costs. I think the costs are higher of not being open to criticism. Or if you think that debate is how the truth wins out.
Yeah, I mean, politically, we might want to be more open to criticism from other women than from men. I don't know if that's right. I mean, and again, it might just be like men have more of some men at least are going to have more of an outside view on the arguments, whereas I don't know.
I don't know either. Yeah. But it seems like an honourable procedural commitment.
Yeah. One which probably won't be widely taken up, but I can nonetheless dream.
But you can espouse, and we can try and practice it.
Seeing as there seems to be about 3 copies of my book in circulation in the whole world, it's probably not going to be taken up.
But after this video, the demand is going to go through the roof.
At least 3 new orders.
I'll have to set up like a lending service. I can lend mine out.
Oh man. Okay. Well, thank you for reading it, and it was nice to talk to you about it. And yeah, some really good challenges which might.
It's a great read.
Yeah, they'll make it into book 2. Maybe there'll be a book 2.
Yeah.
Resolve them.
I hope so.
Okay. See ya.